This video will show you how to replace your front brakes, pads, and rotors on this Subaru Outback. This will be located behind your front wheels. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to safely raise and support so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, we're going to continue on to removing all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts. If you have a locking lug nut, you're going to want to make sure you have that key. Since mine does have the locking lug nuts, I'm going to be using that first. We'll just turn this until it feels like it wants to seat. Once it does, go ahead and turn that counterclockwise to remove it. Now with the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our front brakes. Let's start with our caliper. As far as the caliper is concerned, you have 2 caliper pistons which will need to be pushed in. That can easily be done using a small pry bar. If you are looking at the caliper itself, you're going to find that there's 2 ports. We're using our pry bar directly inside of one of those ports. We'll press it up against our brake rotor edge, and then we'll gently start pulling away. The caliper should start moving. Once you do have some movement from one side, we're going to do the exact same thing on the other port. After you have movement, we're continuing on to our 2 caliper slider bolts next. Now looking back here, we can see our 2 14mm mounting bolts. For the first one, I'm going to loosen it but leave it in a couple threads. Let's get that next one. We can remove the caliper from the area. Once you have it dislodged, you want to pay attention to the caliper pistons. Around each one of the pistons, you can see a dust boot, and if you see any fluid making its way out of the dust boot, that means that the internal seal on the caliper is bad. If that's the case, you'd want to replace it. This one looks fine, so I'm going to hang it aside, putting no pressure on my flex hose. With that caliper hanging aside, we can start removing our brake pads from the area. As you remove these, just give them a quick inspection. We want to see if they're worn at an angle. If they are worn at an angle, you might have an issue with one of your caliper pistons or even a slider pin. We're also paying attention to where our wear indicators are located. You can see that it would be down along the bottom here. So during the installation, we'll make sure that the new pad has that indicator in the same area. Now we'll remove the caliper bracket from this area. We're still looking along the back side of the knuckle, and this is where you're going to find 2 17mm mounting bolts. Same process as before, we'll leave the first one in a couple threads and fully remove the second. There we are, just a quick inspection of the bracket. We are going to have to clean and inspect this, but for now, we'll set it aside. To remove the brake rotor, you may find that it's stuck in place, and if that's the case, we're going to have to dislodge it. For that, I like to use one of my original lug nuts. I started on a couple threads. Continuing on, we'll just cause some vibration. When we do this, we want to be extremely careful not to cause any damage to any of our lug studs. We'll just tap along this area to break it free. Clearly, the lug nut prevented this from falling off. Let's go ahead and take that off of there and remove that brake rotor. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new parts, we're going to make sure we clean and inspect the mounting surface on our wheel bearing hub. I'm going to use a wire brush. You can also use a light sanding disc if necessary. Once you have that cleaned, we'll apply some anti-seize along the mating surface as well. Now, prior to installation of our brand new brake rotor, you need to make sure you clean down both braking surfaces. You have the outboard surface and the inboard surface. I'm just using some parts cleaner directly on a clean rag. We'll give this a quick wipe. When installing this brake rotor, we're going to carefully slide it into position. Now we want to make sure this doesn't fall off, so I'm continuing on with one of my original lug nuts. We'll just go ahead and bottom this out as close as possible. We'll just go ahead and install this as close as possible to the rotor. Now we're focusing on our caliper bracket. As I mentioned, we need to clean and lubricate this, so we're going to start by removing everything from the bracket itself. We have our caliper bracket tins. Just go ahead and pry those out of place. You can use a pry bar or even a flat blade screwdriver if necessary. We'll set those aside for recycling. There's our other one. Now, once you have both of those tins out of place, we're going to continue on by removing our caliper slider pins next. Now, as far as the caliper slider pins, if you were to carefully start pulling these away, you may find that the boot's attached to the slider pin. We'll hold on to that boot, hold on to the slider pin head, and we should be able to slide that out of place. Now, once you have it dislodged, you're going to clean this down, give it a thorough inspection for any rust or damage, and then we're going to re-lubricate it. Now I have this cleaned down, and we can see that we don't have any buildup that's going to cause a restriction in movement here. When we do lubricate this, we're going to lubricate the entire smooth shafted area and make our way up to where my fingers are here. We can see the groove where that slider boot would sit. For now, let's go ahead and set this down, and we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Now, when you remove your slider pins, you're going to find that one of the slider pins on each one of your caliper brackets will have a vibration dampener. You can see it down at the very end here. You want to make sure it's not swollen or damaged in any way. If it can move around or wants to slide off of the pin, you have to replace that. Now this slider pin looks good as well. We're going to set it aside on the corresponding side of the bracket as where we had removed it. Remove your caliper slider pin boots. For that, it's very simple. Just go ahead and take hold of it and pull it out of place. Now we're going to use a rag. We'll twist it and slide it straight through that caliper slider pin boot. Once it's on the other side, just go ahead and start pulling it through. And now we're going to roll the boot around. Essentially, all inside of that boot, there's going to be some lubricant and possibly some debris, and we need to remove it. Once you have that cleaned, give it a thorough inspection. Make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Let's do the same on the opposite side. Now we're going to clean down the bracket itself. Where the caliper bracket tins were, it's common to have some rust build up. We can't have that. So we're going to clean it down. You can use some sandpaper or even a wire brush, whatever works best for you. Just make sure it's a clean mating surface on both sides of the caliper bracket. A quick note, when you're cleaning these, you want to pay attention inside of these grooves. It's fairly difficult for a wire brush to make its way into this area. So I'm just using a flat blade screwdriver, and I'm giving this a light scuffing, removing any miscellaneous debris. We can clean this down. Once you've done as good of a job as you can on one side, go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side of the bracket. Now that we've cleaned those areas, we're going to clean inside of each of the two caliper slider pin ports. For this, I'm going to be using some parts cleaner, so of course I have a collection receptacle. Now a quick note about spraying chemicals into these ports. As you spray in, it's possible it's going to want to come back out, so make sure you're in a safe area to do so. A little bit of parts cleaner and a bore brush. A quick rinse, and a close inspection. Confirm there's no miscellaneous debris. Assuming it looks good, go ahead and repeat the process. Now that we have everything cleaned down, we're continuing on with high temperature caliper lubricant. We're going to lubricate inside of each one of our two caliper slider ports and along the outer edge. The outer edge is where that caliper slider pin boot will sit. We'll just do the same to both sides here. Time for the slider pin boots next. As far as these boots, we're going to slide them into position. Once you feel as though you have it on there, just give it a slight wiggle. We want to make sure it does not fall off. If it falls off, it's probably not going to make a good seal. With the boot in place, continue on with your slider pin. We're lubricating the entire shafted area, all the way up to where my fingers are here. We'll just slide this directly into the caliper slider pin boot. Remove any air from inside of that boot area. You can just do that by squeezing, and now we should be able to release. Everything stays together. Go ahead and repeat the process on the opposite side. Now it's time for our 2 caliper bracket tins. We're lubricating the areas along the bracket that we just finished cleaning down, essentially all areas that that tin is going to be rested up against. This will help prevent moisture from getting in the area and vibration dampening. We'll just press that in until it feels as though it's seated all the way around. Repeat the process on the opposite side. Once you feel as though you have it seated, we can get this on the vehicle. Let's get that caliper bracket in place. We're going to take this, we'll slide it over the rotor and align it along the back side. Now this is where we have our 2 caliper bracket bolts. I've cleaned the threads and applied some blue thread locker. Once you have both bolts started in, snug them up. The torque for these is 89 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our 2 brand new brake pads. You want to make sure you look in your kit. 2 of your brake pads will have wear indicators. We want to have 1 brake pad on each side of the vehicle with a wear indicator. And as I mentioned during the removal process, let's just make sure we have the wear indicator in the same positioning as where we had removed it from. As we bring this into position, we're going to gently start flexing it around our bracket tins here. Should be able to slide it right in. If you have to hit this in with a hammer or it's stuck in any way, just check the alignment. If you have to hammer it, more than likely you didn't clean the bracket well enough. Now it's time for the inboard pad. Same process here. We just want to make sure that we have the pad spreader down along the bottom area. Now as far as the inboard pad, it's a little bit more difficult to gain access to just because it's on the rear of that knuckle. Just make your way underneath the vehicle. You should be able to slide it into position pretty much the same way here. We'll just double check to make sure these pads can move around. They're not stuck in the bracket. That can cause a brake issue. Now it's time to deal with the caliper itself. As far as the caliper, I talked to you about the caliper pistons and looking for a leak. We also need to mention that the 2 caliper pistons need to be pushed in rearward as far as possible. To do that, if you had a typical brake compression tool, you would want to put one of your original brake pads across the 2 and you should be able to squeeze both at the same time. Otherwise, if you have a specialty tool, you could use that as well. You only need to go until it feels as though it bottoms out. Double check to confirm each one of those is properly pushed in, and we'll continue on with high temperature caliper lubricant. As far as that lubricant's concerned, we're going to lubricate the metal portion of each one of the pistons. Once you have those areas lubricated, lubricate along the inboard side of each one of these 3 ears. We're essentially lubricating the areas that touch up against the brake pads. Now we can get the caliper in place. Carefully sliding it over each one of our 2 brand new brake pads will get this in position. Let's get this first one started in here. Once they're started in, snug them up. The torque for these will be 20 foot-pounds. Got our torque wrench here. One last inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Once you have that in place, you're going to continue on with all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. If you do have a locking lug nut, you want to use that as well. We'll start them on, snug them up. Get the wheel back on the ground, and the torque for each of these will be 90 foot-pounds. Now we have the wheel back on the ground, so we're going to torque these to that 90 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Of course, remove your key. Okay friend, we finished our installation. The next thing you need to do is go over to the other side of the vehicle and repeat this exact same process. Once you've completed both sides of the vehicle, you want to pump up the brake pedal till it feels nice and firm and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.